I'm Madison, 30. I'm sitting at my parents' dining table in Dallas, stunned, while my golden boy brother Tyler just announced he's moving into my house in Austin, without even asking me. My parents? Nodding like it's the most reasonable thing in the world. Champagne glasses are clinking, smiles all around, and I'm just sitting there with a secret so big, it's about to ruin their little celebration. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you're watching from, and thanks for being here. Growing up in suburban Dallas, our family looked perfect from the outside. Dad worked construction management. Mom was a nurse at Presbyterian Hospital. Solid middle-class American dream, right? Wrong. See? In the Thompson household, there were two sets of rules. Madison rules and Tyler rules. I'm the older sister by 2 years, and from the time Tyler could walk and talk, it was clear he operated under a completely different system. When I was 14 and wanted a laptop for my coding classes, I had to work concession stands at high school football games for 6 months to save up the money. Tyler wanted a MacBook Pro at 15 because he was exploring his creative side. Boom. Early Christmas present. College was where the real inequality showed. I applied for every scholarship I could find, took out student loans, and worked 20 hours a week at the campus IT help desk throughout my 4 years at UT Dallas. Computer science degree, graduated with honors, but still walked across that stage owing $30,000. Tyler decided art school was his calling 2 years later. Full ride from mom and dad, including a downtown loft apartment because artists need inspiring environments. He dropped out after 3 semesters, claiming the professors didn't understand his vision. The pattern was always the same. Madison works for everything. Tyler gets everything handed to him. Madison faces consequences. Tyler gets rescued. Madison is expected to be grateful for scraps. Tyler throws tantrums when he doesn't get everything he wants immediately. When I landed my first software developer job, right out of college, making decent money for a 22-year-old, you'd think my parents would be proud. Instead, the first thing Mom said was, "Now you can help your brother get back on his feet." Help Tyler how? He was 20 years old with no responsibilities and a brand new BMW that Dad had co-signed for. That's when I started pulling away. Sunday dinners became every other Sunday. Then once a month, then major holidays only. I needed space to breathe, to figure out who I was without constantly being compared to Tyler or expected to clean up his messes. When the job offer came from a tech startup in Austin, 3 hours south but might as well have been another planet, I didn't hesitate. Best decision I ever made. Austin changed everything for me. For the first time in my life, I could make decisions based on what I wanted, not what was expected of me or how it would affect Tyler. I rented a tiny studio apartment near downtown, biked to work, discovered food trucks and live music and a whole community of people who didn't know or care about my family dynamics. The startup was intense but incredible. I was writing code for a financial app, working with brilliant people, learning constantly. When they offered me equity after my first year, I almost cried. Someone believed in my work enough to give me a piece of the company. 2 years in, I got promoted to senior developer. The salary bump meant I could finally start house hunting. Austin's real estate market was competitive, but my job in tech gave me an advantage. I understood the areas that were about to explode with development. I found my house in East Austin, a neighborhood that was transforming from working class to trendy. It was a small 3-bedroom craftsman-style home, built in the 1920s, with original hardwood floors and a covered front porch. The price was at the very top of my budget, but I fell in love with the built-in bookshelves in the living room and the bay window that caught the morning light perfectly. The day I got the keys, I sat on that front porch and called exactly one person, my college roommate Sarah, who was the only family member who'd understood why I needed to leave Dallas. I didn't call my parents until 3 days later, and when I did, Mom's first question wasn't congratulations or how do you feel? It was, does it have room for guests? Over the next 3 years, I turned that house into my sanctuary. I painted every room myself, learned to garden in the backyard, furnished it slowly with pieces I chose because I loved them, not because they were cheap or practical. I hosted dinner parties for my coworkers, had a housewarming where my neighbors brought homemade salsa and craft beer, created a home office where I could freelance on weekends. The mortgage was steep, and old houses always need repairs, but I managed. When the water heater died, I researched contractors and paid for a new one. When the fence blew down in a storm, I learned to use power tools and rebuilt it myself. Every challenge I solved on my own felt like proof that I was capable of taking care of myself. Meanwhile, back in Dallas, Tyler continued his pattern of starting things and abandoning them when they got difficult. Graphic design freelancing that never quite took off. A food truck venture that lasted 3 months before he got bored. A photography business that consisted mostly of taking pictures at parties for friends who never paid him. Every few months, I'd get updates during our brief phone calls. Tyler needed money for new equipment. Tyler's roommate had screwed him over. Tyler's latest girlfriend had broken up with him because she was materialistic. Tyler was thinking about moving to Los Angeles, or Portland, or maybe Denver, somewhere his talents would be appreciated. Each story came with the same subtext. Tyler's problems weren't his fault, and someone else needed to fix them. Usually that someone was mom and dad, but there were increasingly frequent hints that maybe his successful sister could help out family once in a while. I learned to deflect these conversations quickly. That sounds tough, Tyler. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Then I'd change the subject to work or the weather or anything that didn't involve my bank account. 3 weeks ago, everything changed with one phone call. I was in my home office debugging a particularly stubborn piece of code when my phone rang. Mom's contact photo, a picture from last Christmas where she's wearing a reindeer sweater, filled the screen. Madison, honey. Her voice was shaky, tears obvious even through the phone. I need you to sit down. My stomach dropped. In our family, sit-down conversations meant death or disaster. What's wrong? Your father's in the hospital. He had a heart attack this morning. The world tilted. Dad, who prided himself on his physical fitness, who still played pickup basketball at 58, who'd never been sick a day in his life. Is he, how bad? The doctors say it was mild. He's stable now, but Madison, it was so scary. 1 minute he was drinking his coffee and reading the sports section. The next minute he was clutching his chest and couldn't breathe. I was already pulling up airline websites before she finished explaining. I'm coming home. I'll get the next flight out. Oh, sweetheart, would you? I know you're busy with work, but we need family together right now. Tyler's been such a help staying here at the hospital, handling all the logistics. It would mean so much to your father if you came. Something in her tone struck me as odd. Not the worry, that was genuine, but there was something else underneath. A note of anticipation. Like she was pleased about something despite the circumstances. Of course I'm coming, Mom. I'll text you my flight details. Actually, honey, why don't you plan to stay through the weekend? We're having Sunday dinner this week, just family. Your father specifically asked for it. He said this whole thing made him realize how important it is to have his children close. I booked a flight for Friday afternoon and cleared my schedule through Monday. My boss, thankfully, was understanding. Family emergency. Take all the time you need, she said. The code will still be here when you get back. But as I packed my bag, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about that phone call. Mom had mentioned Tyler being helpful, staying at the hospital, handling logistics. This was the same Tyler who'd never handled logistics more complicated than deciding which bar to go to on a Friday night. The flight to Dallas gave me 2 hours to think, and the more I thought, the more questions I had. Why was Mom so insistent on Sunday dinner? Why did she seem almost excited about me staying through the weekend? And since when was Tyler the responsible one in a crisis? I got my first answer when I arrived at the hospital Friday evening. Dad was sitting up in bed, looking tired but alert, joking with the nurses about the hospital food. Tyler was there, but he wasn't the picture of devoted son Mom had painted. He was scrolling through his phone, barely looking up when I hugged Dad. There's my successful daughter, Dad said, squeezing my hand. How's the tech world treating you? Good, Dad. How are you feeling? Like an idiot for scaring everyone. Doctor says I need to reduce stress, eat better, exercise more. Basically everything your mother's been telling me for 20 years. Tyler finally looked up from his phone. Hey, sis. Thanks for coming. Then, almost immediately. How's that house of yours? Still loving Austin? It was an odd question for a hospital room, but I answered anyway. Yeah, it's great. Really glad I made the move. Must be nice having all that space to yourself. 3 bedrooms, right? I stared at him. How do you know how many bedrooms I have? Oh, I don't know, I think Mom mentioned it. He went back to his phone, but I caught him glancing at me, studying my reaction. That's when I knew something was definitely up. Dad was released Saturday morning with strict instructions about medication, diet, and follow-up appointments. Tyler, surprisingly, had been the one to coordinate with the doctors and handle the discharge paperwork. Mom kept praising him for being so responsible and such a help during this crisis. Saturday night, Tyler texted me, "Can't wait for tomorrow's dinner. Mom's making pot roast. It'll be nice to have the whole family together." Again, odd phrasing. Tyler had never been sentimental about family dinners. Usually he showed up late, ate quickly, and left early to meet friends. Sunday morning, Mom called while I was having coffee at my hotel. "Honey, dinner's at 5. And dress nicely. I'm using the good china. This is a special family celebration." "Celebration of what?" "Your father's recovery, of course, and having everyone home together. Oh, and Tyler has some exciting news to share." My stomach nodded. Tyler with exciting news never ended well for anyone but Tyler. I arrived at my parents' house at exactly 5 o'clock. The familiar suburban street looked the same as always. Manicured lawns, 2-car garages, the kind of neighborhood where everyone knew each other's business. But walking up to the front door, I felt like I was entering enemy territory. Mom opened the door wearing her favorite blue dress, the one she saved for church and special occasions. She hugged me tighter and longer than usual, and when she pulled back, her eyes were bright with something that looked like excitement mixed with nervousness. "Oh, sweetheart, you look wonderful. Come in, come in. Your father's in the living room watching the pre-game show, and Tyler should be here any minute." The dining room table was set with Mom's wedding china, crystal glasses, and cloth napkins folded into perfect triangles. A bottle of champagne sat chilling in an ice bucket on the sideboard. Champagne. For a random Sunday dinner in March. "Mom, what's with the champagne?" "Oh, just wanted to make tonight special. Your father's recovery, having you home, Tyler's good news. Lots to celebrate." Dad looked up from his recliner when I entered the living room. He seemed genuinely happy to see me, pulling me into a careful hug mindful of his chest. "There's my girl. How was your morning?" "Good." "Dad, what's Tyler's big news?" Dad and Mom exchanged a look. One of those married couple telepathic conversations that lasted about 3 seconds, but communicated volumes. "Oh, you'll hear all about it at dinner. Tyler wants to tell you himself." The front door opened, and Tyler strolled in carrying a bouquet of flowers and a bottle of wine. This was remarkable for 2 reasons. Tyler was only 20 minutes late instead of his usual hour, and I'd never seen him bring hostess gifts to anything in his entire life. "Sorry I'm running behind," he called out, which was actually an apology, another Tyler first. Traffic was brutal. He was wearing khakis and a button-down shirt, Tyler, who considered basketball shorts formal wear. His hair was recently cut and styled. He looked like he was dressed for a job interview or a first date. "Tyler, you look so handsome," Mom gushed, accepting the flowers. "And wine. How thoughtful." "Just wanted to contribute to the celebration," he said, winking at me. "This is going to be a very special dinner." We sat down to pot roast, garlic mashed potatoes, and green beans, Mom's classic comfort food spread. But the conversation felt anything but comfortable. Every topic seemed loaded with subtext. "Madison, that house of yours must feel so big with just you in it," Mom said, passing the potatoes. "It's perfect for me, actually. I use the spare bedrooms as a home office and storage." "Storage?" Tyler laughed. "What could you possibly need to store? You're not exactly a pack rat." "Computer equipment, books, seasonal decorations, normal house stuff." "But surely you get lonely," Dad chimed in. "All that space, no one to share it with." I set down my fork. "Are you guys trying to tell me something?" "Oh no, honey," Mom said quickly. "We're just saying families should stick together, especially now with your father's health scare. Life's too short to spend it apart from the people who love you." Tyler nodded sagely, as if this was profound wisdom instead of emotional manipulation. "Family first, right? That's what really matters." The meal continued with more pointed comments about my house, my single status, and the importance of family support. Tyler kept checking his phone, and Mom kept glancing at the champagne bottle. Whatever they were building toward was coming soon. As Mom served her famous apple pie, Tyler stood up and reached for the champagne bottle. "I think it's time we let Madison in on the good news." He popped the cork with unnecessary drama and poured 4 glasses while I sat there feeling like I was watching a play where everyone knew their lines except me. As you all know, Tyler began, raising his glass. I've had some setbacks recently. The freelance market is brutal, and my landlord is being completely unreasonable about renewing my lease. This was Tyler speak for, I got evicted for not paying rent, but I stayed quiet. But every cloud has a silver lining, he continued, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Mom and Dad and I have been talking, and we've come up with the perfect solution, a real win-win scenario. He paused dramatically, clearly savoring his moment in the spotlight. Starting next month, I'm moving to Austin. And Madison's been so generous. She's letting me stay at her place while I get established in the market down there. The silence that followed lasted maybe 5 seconds, but it felt like an hour. My parents were beaming at Tyler, then turned expectant smiles toward me, waiting for my enthusiastic endorsement of their plan. Tyler's expression was pure entitlement and smug satisfaction, like he'd cleverly solved a problem instead of created one. Mom and Dad thought the guest room would be perfect for me, Tyler added, when I didn't immediately respond. And since you're never home anyway because of work, you probably won't even notice I'm there. Plus, I can help with utilities and maybe mow the lawn sometimes. Mom nodded encouragingly. We thought it was the perfect solution, honey. Tyler needs a stable place to live while he builds his client base in Austin. And you have all that extra space. Family helping family, Dad jumped in. And this way you wouldn't be all alone in that big house. It's not safe for a young woman to live by herself anyway. I looked around the table at their expectant faces. These people who had discussed my living arrangements, decided what was best for me, and planned to announce it as a done deal without ever asking my opinion. The audacity was breathtaking, but instead of anger, I felt a strange calm settling over me. Because 3 days ago, I'd made a decision that was about to make this conversation very interesting. That's quite a plan, I said, my voice steady despite my heart hammering. There's just one small problem with it. What's that, honey? Mom asked, her smile faltering slightly. I reached for my purse hanging on the back of my chair and removed a manila envelope. I sold my house last week. The new owners take possession in 30 days. The silence that followed my announcement was profound. 3 pairs of eyes stared at me in varying states of disbelief. Mom's hand flew to her throat in a gesture I'd only seen in soap operas. Dad's eyebrows drew together in confusion. Tyler's mouth literally hung open, his champagne glass frozen halfway to his lips. You're joking, right? Tyler finally broke the silence with a nervous laugh. This is some kind of weird payback prank. I removed the closing documents from the envelope and placed them on the table next to the apple pie. The inspection was completed Tuesday. All contingencies were removed Wednesday, and we closed Friday morning. The new owners are a young couple with a baby on the way. They're very excited about the backyard. Dad picked up the papers, adjusting his reading glasses to examine them. His expression darkened as he realized I wasn't kidding. Madison, why would you do something like this without discussing it with your family first? This is a major life decision. The irony wasn't lost on me. You mean the way you all discussed Tyler moving into my house before informing me? That's completely different, Mom interjected. We were trying to help both of you. How exactly does volunteering my home as a crash pad for Tyler help me? Well, you wouldn't be alone anymore, and Tyler could contribute to expenses. Mom, Tyler hasn't contributed to his own expenses in 5 years. What makes you think he'd start now? Tyler snatched the papers from Dad and scanned them frantically, looking for some loophole. You did this on purpose, he accused, slapping the documents down. You heard somehow that I needed a place to stay, and you sold your house to spite me. Not everything is about you, Tyler. I sold my house because it was becoming a financial burden. The plumbing alone needs $7,000 in repairs. Money I don't have because, unlike you, I don't have parents who bail me out of every financial crisis. That's not fair, Madison, Dad said sternly. We've always supported both our children equally. A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. Equally? Dad, I worked 2 jobs to pay for college while you gave Tyler a free ride that he wasted. I saved for 3 years to buy that house, while you've been paying Tyler's rent whenever he comes up short. You bought him a car when his died, but when my transmission went out last year, your advice was to take the bus until I could afford repairs. Your brother has had a harder time finding his path, Mom said, tears welling in her eyes. He needs more support. And whose fault is that? You've been enabling his bad decisions for so long that he's never had to face consequences or grow up. Tyler pushed back from the table, his chair scraping loudly. I don't have to listen to this sanctimonious bullshit. You've always thought you were better than me, Madison. Miss Perfect with her tech job and her house in the trendy neighborhood. I don't think I'm better than you. I just made different choices and worked hard for what I have. What I had, I corrected myself. Well, your choices have screwed me over, Tyler spat. I already gave notice at my apartment. I have to be out by the end of the month, and now I have nowhere to go, Mom gasped. Tyler, you already gave notice? We said to wait until after we talked to Madison. Tyler had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I was being proactive. The landlord was hassling me about noise complaints, and I figured why pay rent for another month when I could move in with Madison. You assumed I would just welcome you with open arms? Because you would have said no, Tyler shouted. You've always been selfish. Enough! Dad rarely raised his voice, so his sharp command silenced the room. This is getting us nowhere. Madison, is there any way you can back out of this sale? If you explain the situation, maybe the buyers would understand. I stared at him in disbelief. Are you seriously asking me to cancel a legal contract, potentially get sued, and definitely lose my earnest money? Also, Tyler can have a free place to crash after I just told you I needed to sell for financial reasons? We could help with the plumbing costs, Mom offered quickly. And maybe chip in for utilities while Tyler stays with you. The sale is final, and even if it wasn't, I wouldn't cancel it for this reason. Tyler is 26 years old. He needs to solve his own housing crisis. Tyler stood up abruptly. Thanks for the support, sis. Really feeling the family love right now. He stormed toward the front door. Tyler, wait, Mom called, rising to follow him. Let him go, I said wearily. He needs to cool down. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the china cabinet. Mom sank back into her chair, tears flowing freely now. How could you do this to your brother? He's going to be homeless. He's not going to be homeless. He has options. He could find a roommate situation, rent a studio apartment, or even stay with you and Dad temporarily while he finds a place. Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. Well, we'd offer, of course, but your mother just converted Tyler's old room into her craft space, and we donated all the furniture. You still have the guest room. That's more of a storage space now, Mom said quickly. Besides, Tyler needs his independence. Just not enough independence to find his own housing solution. The conversation continued in circles for another hour. My parents alternated between guilt trips about family loyalty and suggestions for how I could still accommodate Tyler despite selling my house. Could I let him stay with me in my new place? Could I help pay for his apartment until he found a job? Would I consider lending him money from the sale proceeds? Each suggestion made it clearer that they viewed my resources as a family fund that should be available to solve Tyler's problems. The money from my house sale wasn't seen as my financial security. It was potential relief for Tyler's latest crisis. Finally, I gathered my purse and the closing documents. I need to go. I have an early flight tomorrow and I need to start packing. Madison, please, Mom began, but I cut her off. I love you both, but I can't keep having this same conversation. Tyler is an adult, and his housing situation is not my responsibility. I hope you'll help him find a realistic solution, but I need to focus on my own transition right now. Dad walked me to the door in silence. As I turned to say goodbye, he surprised me by pulling me into a tight hug. I'm proud of you, he whispered, even when I don't understand your decisions. It was a small acknowledgement, but in that moment, it meant everything. The days following the disastrous family dinner brought a barrage of texts, calls, and voicemails from various family members. My phone became a battlefield of emotions, with messages ranging from guilt-inducing to outright hostile. Tyler led the charge with angry texts that evolved from, "I can't believe you would do this to me," to detailed explanations of how I'd apparently ruined his life. According to him, his entire future had been planned around moving into my house, despite this plan being conceived without my knowledge or consent. I already told everyone I was moving to Austin, one particularly entitled message read. Now I look like an idiot because my own sister would rather sell her house than help me out. I kept my replies brief and factual. I sold my house for financial reasons. Your living situation is separate from my decision. My parents employed a different tactic. Rather than Tyler's direct anger, they attempted to negotiate as if we were discussing a business arrangement, rather than a fundamental boundary issue. "Your father and I have been talking," Mom said during one of her daily calls. "What if we help with the down payment on your new place? Something with an extra bedroom, just for 6 months until Tyler finds his feet." "Mom, that's not the solution. I'm downsizing intentionally to reduce my financial stress. Adding Tyler to my living situation would add stress, not reduce it." Even extended family began weighing in. My Aunt Susan called to express her disappointment in my lack of family values. My cousin Patrick sent a lengthy email about how his brother had lived with him during a rough patch and how it strengthened their bond. None of them acknowledged the fundamental difference. Those arrangements had been mutual agreements, not unilateral declarations. Meanwhile, I continued the practical work of preparing for my move. The buyers had agreed to a 60-day close, giving me time to find a new place and relocate. The profit from the sale sat in a high-yield savings account, providing financial security I'd never experienced before. Working with a different real estate agent, I began viewing apartments and smaller condos in more affordable neighborhoods. After years of stretching myself thin to maintain the dream house, the prospect of a simpler living situation was surprisingly appealing. One afternoon, while signing a lease on a modern 2-bedroom apartment in a converted warehouse building, my phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "We need to talk, coming over after work." I considered telling him not to come, but decided it might be better to have this conversation face-to-face rather than through more heated text exchanges. When I arrived home from the leasing office, Tyler's car was already in my driveway. He sat on the front steps, looking uncharacteristically subdued. The anger from Sunday dinner had been replaced by something that looked almost like vulnerability. "Nice of you to let me know you were coming," I said, unlocking the front door. "Sorry, I needed to see you." The living room was already half-packed, with labeled boxes stacked against the walls. Tyler looked around with a frown, the reality of my move apparently hitting him for the first time. "So you're really going through with this," he said. "The house is sold, Tyler. The new owners take possession in 6 weeks. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that reminded me of Dad when he was stressed. "Look, I came to apologize for how I acted at dinner. That wasn't cool." The half-hearted apology hung in the air between us. "Is that all you came to say?" "No." He dropped onto the couch without invitation. "I came to see if we could work something out. I'm in a real bind here, Madison. My landlord won't renew my lease no matter what, and I have to be out by the end of the month. That's unfortunate, but it doesn't change my situation." "What about a loan then?" "Just enough for first and last month's rent and security deposit on a new place. I'll pay you back as soon as I land a steady client." The familiar pattern threatened to repeat itself. Tyler in trouble, family expected to rescue him. Promises of repayment that would never materialize. For a moment, I actually considered it. The money from the house sale meant I could afford to help without significant hardship. But then I remembered every previous loan that had become a gift, every promise to do better that had evaporated as soon as the crisis passed. "No, Tyler, I'm not going to loan you money." "Are you serious?" The vulnerability vanished, replaced by indignation. "I'm your brother. And you're 26 years old. You've had plenty of opportunities to build emergency savings, but you choose to spend everything you earn immediately." "Must be nice to be so perfect," he sneered. "Some of us have had bad luck." "This isn't about luck. This is about choices and consequences. You chose to violate your lease terms repeatedly. You chose to spend money on concerts and trips instead of saving for emergencies. Now you're facing the consequences of those choices. So you're just going to let me be homeless? Your own brother? You have options that don't involve me. You could ask friends for a couch to crash on temporarily. You could look for a room to rent, which would be much cheaper than getting your own place. You could even swallow your pride and stay with Mom and Dad while you find something permanent." "None of those are real options," Tyler insisted. "My friends all have small places. Roommate situations are for college kids, and Mom and Dad's house is in the middle of nowhere." I couldn't help laughing at his definition of nowhere. Our parents lived in the same suburban neighborhood where we'd grown up, 30 minutes from downtown Dallas. Those all sound like real options to me. They're just not as comfortable or convenient as moving into my house would have been. That's the difference, Tyler. You don't want any solution that requires sacrifice or discomfort on your part. You've changed, he said, grabbing his jacket. Ever since you bought this place, you've been different. Like you think you're better than the rest of us. I haven't changed. I've just stopped apologizing for having boundaries and expectations. Maybe it's time you change, Tyler. Maybe losing your apartment is the wake-up call you need. Whatever helps you sleep at night, he spat, heading for the door. Have fun in your tiny apartment while I figure out how to avoid living on the street. As the door slammed behind him, I sank onto the couch and closed my eyes. The confrontation had been unpleasant but necessary. For perhaps the first time, I'd refused to be drawn into the drama that always surrounded Tyler like a storm cloud. I'd maintained my boundaries despite the emotional manipulation. It felt both terrible and liberating, like lancing a wound that had been festering for years. The next morning brought a surprising text from Dad. Your mother and I have been talking. Tyler will stay in the guest room until he finds a place. We'd appreciate if you could help us clear out some storage to make space for him. It was a small victory, but significant. For the first time, my parents were stepping up to help Tyler in a way that didn't involve imposing on me or enabling his worst habits. As I continued packing over the next few weeks, I made a difficult but necessary decision. I needed a break from family drama to focus on establishing my new life. I sent a group text explaining that I'd be taking some time for myself during the transition and would be available for emergencies, but needed space to process my move. The responses were predictably varied. Mom expressed hurt and confusion. Dad sent a simple, "We understand. Take the time you need." Tyler didn't respond at all. Moving day arrived with a mix of exhaustion and excitement. As the movers loaded my furniture into their truck, I walked through the empty rooms one last time. Each space held memories: the kitchen where I'd learned to cook real meals, the home office where I'd worked late into the night on challenging projects, the living room where I'd hosted friends for game nights and dinner parties. But as I handed over the keys to the young couple who'd bought the house, I felt lighter than I had in years. Their excitement was infectious as they discussed their plans for the nursery and the garden. My house would become their home, and there was something beautiful about that continuation. My new apartment was everything the house wasn't: modern, low maintenance, with concrete floors and exposed brick walls. Large industrial windows flooded the open-concept living space with natural light. It was stylish in a way my old house had never been, and the smaller footprint forced me to be intentional about what I kept. What surprised me most was the immediate financial relief. After paying off the remaining mortgage and setting aside money for taxes, I had enough left to clear all my outstanding debts and establish a healthy emergency fund. My monthly expenses dropped dramatically, without the burden of the mortgage and constant home repairs. For the first time in years, I could look at my bank account without anxiety. Meanwhile, across town, my family was undergoing their own adjustment period. True to their word, my parents had cleared space for Tyler, but according to Mom's occasional updates, the arrangement wasn't without challenges. He stays out until all hours, she complained during one brief phone conversation. And he leaves his dishes in the sink, even though I've asked him repeatedly to clean up after himself. I listened sympathetically but resisted the urge to say, "I told you so." This was a lesson my parents needed to learn for themselves. The real surprise came 6 weeks after my move, when Dad called with unexpected news. "Your brother got a job," he announced with cautious optimism. "A real job with benefits, at a marketing firm downtown. He starts Monday." "That's great, Dad. What changed?" "Well," Dad said with a chuckle, "your mother implemented some house rules. Rent due on the 1st, chores assigned weekly, and a curfew on weeknights." Tyler pitched a fit at first, but when we stood firm, he realized we were serious. "Mom is charging him rent?" "Not much, just enough to give him some responsibility. We're putting the money aside to help him with a security deposit when he finds his own place, but he doesn't know that part." It was a small step, but significant. For perhaps the first time, my parents were treating Tyler like an adult capable of meeting expectations, rather than a perpetual child in need of rescue. 2 months later, Tyler found a studio apartment within his budget in a neighborhood not far from his new job. It was small and far from luxurious, but it was his, earned through his own efforts. When he hosted a modest housewarming party, I brought a plant and a gift card to a nearby grocery store. "Thanks for coming," he said awkwardly as I was leaving. "I know things have been weird between us." "Family is complicated," I replied with a smile. "But we're figuring it out." For what it was worth, he added, hands shoved in his pockets. "I get it now. Why you were so protective of your house and your independence. I shouldn't have expected you to sacrifice what you worked for just because I made poor choices." It wasn't a grand apology, but from Tyler, it was significant progress. "I appreciate that. And for what it's worth, I'm proud of what you're building for yourself now." As summer turned to fall, I found myself settling comfortably into my new life. The apartment had become home, decorated with my favorite pieces from the house and a few new additions better suited to the urban industrial aesthetic. My financial situation had stabilized, allowing me to focus on building my career rather than just paying bills. With the proceeds from the house sale invested wisely, I began looking at starting my own consulting business, something I'd always wanted to try but never felt secure enough to attempt. The extra money gave me a cushion to take risks I couldn't afford before. Meanwhile, my relationship with my family continued to evolve. My parents, seeing the positive changes in Tyler's life, began to understand the damage their enabling had caused. They still supported both of us, but in healthier ways that acknowledged our adulthood and autonomy. Mom started therapy to work through her anxiety about Tyler's well-being. "I realized I was trying to control outcomes I had no business controlling," she told me during one of our weekly phone calls. "Tyler needed to learn to handle his own problems, and I needed to learn to let him." Dad took a different approach, offering Tyler practical advice about budgeting and career development instead of financial bailouts. "Turns out he actually listens when I'm not just handing him money," Dad said with surprise. Tyler and I would never be best friends, but we were learning to interact with mutual respect rather than resentment and entitlement. He'd earned a promotion at the marketing firm and was even starting to build a small emergency fund. "Got my first performance bonus today," he texted me one evening, taking myself out to celebrate. "Never thought I'd say this, but thanks for not letting me move in. Needed the kick in the pants." I smiled at the message, feeling a complex mix of emotions. The path to this moment had been painful for all of us, but perhaps necessary. 6 months after selling my dream house, I stood in the living room of a different property, a modest 2-bedroom townhouse in a quiet neighborhood just outside downtown Austin. Sunlight streamed through windows that overlooked a small but private patio garden. The space was smaller than my former house, but more practical for my needs, with modern amenities that wouldn't require constant repairs. "What do you think?" asked my realtor, a colleague who'd patiently shown me dozens of properties over the past few months. "I think this might be the one," I replied, already envisioning my furniture in the space. This time, my home purchase was driven by practicality rather than emotion. I'd carefully calculated what I could comfortably afford without stretching my finances to the breaking point. The remaining proceeds from selling my previous house had been invested, and I was using a substantial down payment that would keep my monthly mortgage manageable. The financial security that came from making smarter choices had transformed more than just my housing situation. Without the constant stress of living paycheck to paycheck, I found myself sleeping better, enjoying my work more, and having energy for hobbies and friendships that had been neglected during my house-poor years. When I called my parents to tell them about the new place, their reaction was markedly different from 3 years ago. "That sounds perfect for you, honey," Mom said warmly. "We're so proud of how thoughtfully you're approaching this decision." "Will it have room for guests?" Dad asked, then quickly added, "Not that we're inviting ourselves. Just wondering if you'll have space when friends visit." The question that once would have sent up red flags now felt genuinely caring rather than manipulative. As I signed the purchase agreement for my townhouse, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The confrontation at that fateful family dinner had initially created deep rifts, but over time, those painful conversations had led to unexpected healing. Tyler had surprised everyone, including himself, with his growth over the past year. After the initial shock of having to solve his own housing crisis, he'd found an affordable apartment, committed to his marketing job, and even started building an emergency savings account. We weren't close in the way some siblings are, but we had developed a mutual respect that had been absent for most of our adult lives. My parents had undergone their own transformation. Having Tyler live with them temporarily had been a wake-up call regarding the consequences of their enabling behavior. They'd been forced to establish boundaries they should have set years earlier, and in doing so, had discovered that Tyler was capable of far more independence than they'd believed. We did him no favors, Mom had admitted during a heart-to-heart conversation over coffee. We thought we were protecting him, but we were actually preventing him from growing up. It took your standing firm for us to see that. The most profound changes, however, had occurred within me. Selling my dream house had initially felt like failure, but with time and perspective, I recognized it as one of the wisest decisions I'd ever made. I'd learned to distinguish between the things that truly brought value to my life and the status symbols I'd been conditioned to pursue. My new approach to finances reflected this shift in priorities. Rather than pouring every dollar into maintaining an impressive house, I now budgeted for experiences and relationships that brought genuine joy. Weekend trips with friends, cooking classes I'd always wanted to try, and even the occasional family vacation that created memories more valuable than any physical possession. The family dynamics had improved dramatically once we all began to recognize and respect each other's boundaries. My parents no longer expected me to solve Tyler's problems, and Tyler no longer assumed he was entitled to my resources. We functioned as adults with separate lives who chose to support each other in healthy ways. Last month, Tyler had even repaid a small loan I'd reluctantly given him for car repairs, something that would have been unimaginable a year ago. The amount was less significant than the principal. He was taking responsibility for his obligations and honoring his commitments. As I walked through my new townhouse one final time before the closing, I thought about how different this purchase felt from my first home. There was no desperate reaching for something beyond my means, no anxiety about making ends meet, no fear that one major repair would derail my finances. This house represented not just shelter, but wisdom gained through difficult experience. True security, I'd learned, came not from impressive possessions, but from wise choices, healthy boundaries, and authentic relationships. After the closing, I sent a group text to my family. Just signed the papers on my new place. Smaller, smarter, and actually affordable. Housewarming party next month. Tyler, I expect you to bring that spinach dip you made for Thanksgiving. Tyler's response came almost immediately. Only if you promise not to sell this house the next time I need a favor. The joke, which would have been unthinkable 6 months ago, made me laugh out loud. We had all grown through this experience, painful as it had been. That evening, as I sat on my apartment balcony watching the sunset over the Austin skyline, I felt a contentment that had eluded me even in my dream house. True security, I'd discovered, came not from impressive possessions, but from wise choices, healthy boundaries, and relationships built on mutual respect rather than obligation or manipulation. The journey had been difficult, but the destination had proven worth every painful step. In losing my dream house, I'd found something far more valuable. A dream life built on reality rather than appearances, on wisdom rather than wishful thinking. So here's what I learned through all of this chaos. Setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's necessary. Your success is not a family resource to be redistributed without your consent. And sometimes protecting your peace requires disappointing people who have grown comfortable with your sacrifices. If you're watching this and relating to any part of my story, whether you're the family member being taken advantage of, or maybe you're the one who's been enabled too long, know that change is possible. It's never too late to establish healthy boundaries or to start taking responsibility for your own life. The hardest part isn't making the decision to change. It's sticking with it when everyone around you is telling you you're wrong, selfish, or cruel. When my family was pressuring me to let Tyler move in, it would have been so much easier to just say yes and avoid the conflict. But easy isn't always right. Today, 8 months after that explosive dinner, I'm happier than I've ever been. My consulting business is taking off. My relationship with my family is healthier because it's based on choice rather than obligation. And Tyler just got promoted at his job. Turns out all he needed was for everyone to stop rescuing him and start believing he could rescue himself. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's worst instincts. Sometimes losing what you think you want opens the door to what you truly need. And sometimes the biggest gift you can give your family is showing them that they're stronger than they think they are. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had to make a difficult decision that disappointed family, but was right for you? How did you handle the guilt and pressure? Let's support each other in the comments because I know I'm not the only one who's dealt with family drama like this. And if you want to hear more stories about setting boundaries and standing up for yourself, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, I've got more family stories where this came from. Until next time, remember, your life, your rules, your choice. Because at the end of the day, the only person responsible for your happiness and security is you. And that's not selfish, that's survival.